Since obtaining my Husqvarna model 1907 from Kramer Auctions towards the end of last year, I plan to make an in-depth video on it. Found that I should really cover the FN 1903, so you'll be getting a 2-for-1 in this production. Now if I really wanted to do this correctly, I'd remake my FN 1900 video first, as I made that before owning Anthony van der Linden's books on the FN pistols, the absolute Bible on the subject, and I highly recommend getting from Wet Dog Publications. Basic Arsenals also recently remade their FN 1900 video, so I encourage you to check it out if you want to take a deep dive into it. Without further ado, let's jump into the pistols out of this video's subject. As I've owned a Colt 1903 pocket hammerless for several years, it showed up at a local gun store for a really good price. Now, even though I should have known better, I always assumed the FN 1903 was just a copy of this design to be sold in Europe, as when you look at pictures they look nearly identical. Now this illusion was made clear to me when I bought my Husqvarna pistol and noted the large weight and size difference. When making mental notes for the model 1907 video, I realized that I really needed to tell the story of the FN 1903 to provide context, so I jumped at the opportunity to pick one up from a recent Carol Watson's auction. Both the Colt and FN 1903 are the same design, just different sizes, calibers, and ironically made for different markets. Prior to the 1903 pistols, Colt and FN's Browning's design offerings ended up serving two different markets. Colt desired a larger caliber military contract in North America, not seeing much popularity on the civilian market. Now FN, while desiring a military contract, saw success in the civilian market with their smaller pistol in Europe. Most militaries wanted either a larger caliber that fired from a longer barrel than what was offered by the 32 ACP FN 1900. Colt saw the civilian market success of the FN 1900 and desired a more pocket-friendly pistol for the civilian market, as their bulky 1900 and 1902 pistols were not as popular. Now it's unknown who initiated the design request to Browning first in 1901, but he churned out two prototypes of the same design, one in 32 ACP and the other in an FN developed cartridge that was likely derived from 38 ACP using the early Colt pistols, the 9x20mm Browning Long. Now the 9mm Browning had a lighter bullet and shorter case than the 38 ACP. These pistols were simple blowback pistols with a recoil retarding spring below the barrel and an internal hammer. The larger pistol had a lever on the right side that was used as a side hold open, while the smaller pistol lacked this. Both pistols had manually operated slide safeties as well as a grip safety. Alright, let's take a little closer look at our FN 1903. It's a simple blowback system and it is beautifully simple. It breaks down in only 27 parts and it was copied for nearly a half century by pistol makers around the world. So just shows simplicity. Let's go ahead and do a quick field strip. We take our magazine out. We are empty. So bring our slide back, hook it up there, and like most Browning designs, we'll go ahead and turn our barrel, let our slide go. Our whole upper comes out. It is simple blowback, so you got your recoil retard spring just below the barrel. To get our barrel out, we got a bushing up here, which is familiar for a lot of Browning designs. And we just got to turn our barrel back, pull our barrel out, and there it is, field strip. Now, to show that it is internal hammer, we got a little hammer right there. Now, they did call the Colt 1903 pocket hammerless. Like everything inside this pistol is the same as this. The only reason they did that was to differentiate between the external hammer, Colt pocket hammer, which this fired 38 ACP as opposed to 32 ACP in the Colt. But this is a larger FN. So one thing that FN did to try to gain military contracts they thought militaries would like is that they put serial numbers on almost everything. So you see serial number there, maybe. We got a serial number on our barrel. So yeah, right there. If we focus, we got serial number even on our bushing right there. Keep our barrel from rolling away. So there's like a serial number on almost every single part. So let's go ahead and put this back together. We're just going to stick our barrel in there, and now there's a little indentation right there in the slide. If I can get it in the light. So get our barrel in. Let's go ahead and put our bushing back in. We start out with the fork kind of facing straight up. Bring it back around, and we want to make sure our barrel is twisted down like that. Now to get this is kind of loosey-goosey here, but we've got a hole there to stick our guide rod in for our spring. So I'm going to go ahead and stick that back and try to get everything lined up on the slide. Sometimes you just got to do a little bit of force on this to get it back. Let's go ahead and hit our little slide stop. We've got to get our barrel twisted back. Sometimes it doesn't want to do it on the first try, but we've got our barrel twisted back. Test fire, and we are back together. So let's go ahead, do a little history, a lot more history actually, and some shooting with this. Colt would adopt the smaller pistol as the Colt automatic pistol in 1903, later calling it the pocket hammerless, to avoid confusion with this larger 1903 pistol that fired the .38 ACP and had an external hammer. Colt's 1903 and later 1908, which was the 1903 N380, would be wildly successful over the next half century, selling over 710,000 pistols. The larger FN 1903, or the Grand Model, would not see as much success for the reasons I'll get to in a bit. But first, let's shoot my 1903. The FN 1903. Nice! Now it's common to blame the pistol being simple blowback for, with the exception of Sweden, its non-adoption as any military's main sidearm. There are a few small orders here and there for the Netherlands, Ottoman Empire / Turkey, Estonia, Paraguay, and El Salvador. Their main shot for major adoption was Russia, who looked to replace the 1895 Nagant revolver. This would have seen the pistol sent with a stock attachment that would have required the use of an extended 10-round magazine. There was even a royalty reduction agreement with Browning negotiated in 1909 for an up to 250,000 pistol production license. Russian bureaucracy would delay the adoption, and the Great War and Russian Revolution would ultimately prevent Russian production. When the Germans invaded Belgium in 1914, FN had a lot of 1903 parts on hand, likely for this impending Russian contract. Otherwise, the timing of the pistol and the desire for a more powerful military cartridge by many militaries did play a role in its general non-adoption, but there are a couple of huge factors outside the pistol design that prevented it from being a huge success. The numerical lack of trials pistols produced, and the ownership situation at FN. These two reasons are not unrelated. FN was running on a tight budget and did not want to repeat some of the mistakes of the 1899/1900 pistol. When FN made what became the model 1899 pistol and submitted it to military trials, they didn't want to miss out on commercial sales, so they went ahead and ramped up production while the military was still checking the pistol out. When the military requested changes in creating the pistol that became the Belgian military model 1900, FN would run two small lines to produce both pistols. When the production of the military contract was complete, the 1900 line was idle while the 1899 line was producing pistols for the commercial market, and commercial demand was only increasing. It was decided to consolidate these two models to create what would become the FN model 1900 and produce the same pistol using both production lines. Ownership considered this transition costly and wasteful. FN wanted to avoid this with the model 1903, as they knew commercial demand would be low, and they didn't want a full-on production line until requested changes could be implemented and a military contract was received. This created the problem of not enough trials pistols being produced, which likely cost them some contracts. Demonstration pistols would have to be sent out, demonstrated, sent back to FN, and then they'd be sent out to another party that was interested. The lack of trials pistols likely cost them the Norwegian artillery contract, as they wanted 100 to 500 pistols for field trials, but FN lacked the ability to make them. FN's major stockholder, DWM, wanted a military contract before funds would be allocated to produce the pistol, and this is where we tie in the second reason I mentioned earlier, the ownership situation of FN, which would actively sabotage FN's efforts at times. To examine this aspect, we need to go back to the beginning of FN. Liège, Belgium was always a center for firearms production for centuries. By the mid-1800s, smaller arms companies would begin to form consortiums in order to obtain and fulfill larger orders. One of these consortiums, United Arms Manufacturers, formed to convert 30,000 Beaumont rifles for the Dutch in 1887. They would ultimately lose out to German firms. Belgium wanted domestic production of 150,000 new rifles as they desired to modernize their military. A new consortium formed, and many of these were members of the United Arms Manufacturers in order to make a bid for the 150,000 rifle contract. This consortium would become FN with some pretty famous names as investors, including Piper, Bormans, Francot, and Nagant, and they'd be rewarded the contract even with the type of rifle not yet known. The Belgian government would acquire the manufacturing rights to produce the model 1889 Mauser from Ludwig Loewe in Germany, and they would share these rights. FN would build their factory in Herstal, a suburb of Liège. Initially, they wanted U.S. firms to provide machinery, but Metro Conversions would force them to look to Loewe for machinery and technical assistance. FN would produce these 150,000 rifles by New Year's Eve 1894, and for a decent profit. FN was a little too successful, as Francot and Nagant felt it interfered with their own businesses. Chile wanted to purchase 60,000 Spanish pattern Mauser rifles, but Mauser would call patent infringement and FN would lose in court. 5 more of the primary shareholders would sell off their shares. Ludwig Loewe would swoop in and acquire majority control in 1896. This same year, Loewe would consolidate themselves and create Deutsche Waffen- und Munitionfabriken Antiken Gesellschaft, or as we commonly call it, DWN. This wasn't done to increase DWM Loewe's military production, but to stifle it. All Mauser contracts, with the exception to serve the Belgian military, would be routed to DWM in Germany. This would force FN to diversify and produce things like vehicles, commercial 22s, and bicycles. The latter is what actually led to Browning's involvement with FN, as Hart O. Berg was in the U.S. to obtain the rights to produce a shaft-driven bicycle, and he used his prior connections with Browning to set up a meeting with him, where Browning introduced him to the 32 ACP pistol, which would become the model 1899 and 1900. The 1900 proved to be a huge commercial success, and FN would desire military contracts for a pistol. This is where DWM, fearing competition for German-made pistols, would step in and be fairly tight with funding for making pre-production trial pistols. Lack of the ability to produce numerous trials pistols cost them contracts and would have likely killed the 1903, or at the very least they wouldn't have come anywhere near to producing the 58,000 produced through 1927, if not through the aborted Russian contract or FN's agent in Norway and Sweden, Paul Berghaus. In 1903 through 1904, Sweden held trials for a new sidearm that included 7.65 Lugers, FN 1900s, 7.65 Mannlicher pistols, Colt 9.5mm pistols, Mannlicher carbine pistols, Fromer 8mm pistols, and a couple of FN 1903 pistols. Now, while the Lugers were more accurate, the FN 1903 was liked for its perceived reliability in Sweden's harsh conditions. Thanks to Berghaus handling everything on FN's end, including ensuring desired minor modifications, Sweden would accept the 1903 as the M07 for the Army and the capital M07 for the Navy, The model of 1907, the year of adoption. Sweden would order 10,000 pistols, but send more to Berghaus, who would directly sell to military personnel and civilians. Military pistols would be inspected in the Carl Gustaf's factory, and a Swedish crown would be stamped above FN inspectors' marks on the rear of the pistol. Now, it's unknown when Berghaus negotiated a license agreement with FN, whether it was in the original contract in 1907 or later on due to Belgium's occupation by Germany in World War I, but production of the 1907 pistol would begin at Husqvarna in 1917. Now, side note, I know there are some Swedes who will happen upon this video who will knock that pronunciation and say, in the fact that I didn't say Husqvarna.
What is it that makes a Husqvarna?
I'm in the US, and commercials for chainsaws here usually have a dude with a deep voice saying, Husqvarna, taming the wild.
Husqvarna, taming the wild.
So I'm going with the American pronunciation. Now, Husqvarna would produce these pistols mainly for the military, with a trickle of commercial pistols as designated Automat Pistol number 500 until 1942, with pistols being put together from existing parts until 1944. Even though at 94,000 pistols produced, far outnumbering the total of 1903 pistols produced by FN, production was sporadic, and Berghaus would sell FN-produced pistols on the commercial market, as well as take a small military order from FN in 1926, shortly before FN would cease production in 1928. After this, FN would defer sales of the FN 1903 to Husqvarna, such as when Colombia ordered 771 in the mid-1930s. Sweden would soon replace the model 1907 when they adopted the Lottie L35 design in 1940, becoming the Model 40 in 9x19. After their initial plan of adopting the Walther P38 as the M39 went up in smoke as shipments were cut off due to the outbreak of World War II. Sweden did make a few 9x19 prototypes of the Model 7, but simple blowback 9x19 was bound to go nowhere. The Model 7 would go into reserve, but would see service again in the 1980s. As I've gone over in my Model 40 video long time ago, Sweden was unable to obtain the nickel steel alloy they wanted to use, so they produced the Model 40 with lower quality steel. This, coupled with using hot 9mm MET for the Carl Gustaf's M45 submachine gun, would reduce the expected life of the Model 40 to 3,000 rounds. Cracks in the M40 in the 1980s would lead to this pistol's retirement, and the Model 7 brought out of mothballs, until they would adopt the Glock 17 as the Model 88 in 1988. In the 1950s, some Model 7 pistols would be exported to the US by Golden State Arms, where they'd be converted to .380 ACP, as in the case of my pistol. Husqvarna M1907. Kind of like this. It's kind of a heavier pistol, but with the light round, it's nice and well balanced. Now, there's nothing special about either one of my pistols, and I'm going to venture to guess that my FN 1903 is commercial, as it only has Belgian markings on it, nothing to indicate that it was accepted in the service of a military or law enforcement agency of any other nation. The serial number would put it being produced in the first half of 1925. Now, I'm happy with the excellent shape it's in, and shooting was a blast, as the size and weight of the pistol seemed to match well with the 9x20mm cartridge. I really didn't notice much difference between shooting it or the Husqvarna model 1907, which has been converted to 380, likely upon importation. Now besides the caliber, the only real difference between the two is the finish. While the 1903 has a nice bright blue, the Husqvarna appears to have been through at least one Arsenal refurbishment, as the finish makes it look like it has a bit rougher phosphate finish. Going by the serial number and proof markings, the 1907 appears to have been a regular military pistol that was produced between 1934 and 38, as van der Linden's book doesn't get much more specific than that when it comes to the dating. I know it isn't commercial as it doesn't have the H above the crown on the proof. These are not only good pistols to have in the collection, they shoot well. If you want to see how I obtained the Husqvarna, click over here. Otherwise, please join the GOA and get $5 off your membership with the link below. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a great day.